Okay, be honest. We all have those classic movies that we, should watch. But they just seem a little intimidating,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And The Godfather, I think, is one of those movies for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But you didn't let that stop you. You went ahead, you watched it, and then you sent in this amazing analysis.
It's true. And what's really striking is that you didn't just, give a typical review.
Right.
You really went deep into the historical context, which is so important for understanding, I think, why The Godfather became such a phenomenon.
It was a very specific time in Hollywood history, too. I mean, the late 60s and early 70s. A real turning point.
Yeah.
You talked about how there was this new wave of directors, many of them influenced by European cinema. So where does Coppola and The Godfather fit into all of that?
Right. Well, he was very much a part of that new generation, putting boundaries, experimenting with storytelling. But what makes The Godfather so fascinating is how he blended those new ideas, those fresh, modern ideas, with those classic filmmaking techniques.
Mm.
Remember that phrase that you used in your critique, paradoxical yet resonant?
Oh, yeah.
I think that captures it perfectly.
I have to admit, when I first read that, I was like, okay, that sounds really smart, but what does that actually mean? Like, for somebody watching the film, break that down for us a little bit.
Okay, sure. So think about it this way.
Yeah.
On the surface, you have a gangster movie.
Yeah.
Full of violence, crime, but it's also this deeply moving family drama.
Right.
You have these moments of really brutal action right alongside these beautifully shot, intimate scenes. And the acting, so nuanced. It's that complexity, that ability to hold all of these contrasting elements together. That's what makes it, I think, a masterpiece.
Speaking of contrasting elements, in your analysis, you mentioned the very first scene of the movie, the opening scene.
Yeah.
And how that kind of sets up the central tension that runs through the whole film.
Yes, you highlighted how that opening scene, we're at this wedding, it's this joyous family celebration. But then, boom, immediately we're taken into Don Vito Corleone's office.
Yeah.
Which is dimly lit.
Yeah.
And he's dealing with the dark side of the family business.
Right. And that visual contrast alone is so powerful. Why do you think Coppola chose to start the film that way? What's he trying to tell us?
Well, I think it's such a brilliant way to establish the conflict.
Right.
Right from the very beginning. You have this juxtaposition of light and shadow, joy and darkness. And I think it immediately introduces us to the moral complexities that this family embodies.
Yeah.
I mean, they're loving, they're ruthless, powerful, yet vulnerable. And that duality, I think, is at the heart of what makes them so compelling.
Makes you realize it's not just a typical gangster flick.
Exactly.
Where it's black and white, good versus evil.
Right.
There's so many shades of gray in this film. And of course, we can't talk about The Godfather without talking about, the performances.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Marlon Brando as Don Vito.
Yes.
Al Pacino as Michael.
Incredible.
You raved about both of them in your critique.
Well, they're both at the top of their game in this film.
Huh.
Brando, he's so much more than just your, stereotypical mob boss.
Yeah.
He has this quiet power, this calculated intelligence, but also this warmth and tenderness towards his family. It's really remarkable.
Yeah. And then there's Michael,
Right.
played by Pacino. Oh my gosh, talk about a character arc.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he starts out, he's a war hero. He seems so untouched by the family business.
Yeah.
And then ends up becoming, this cold, calculating crime lord. Was there a moment in your analysis where that shift really hit you?
Well, it's interesting because his transformation isn't this sudden shift.
Yeah.
Pacino does it so subtly. It's gradual. You see it in his expressions, his body language.
Yeah.
You mentioned in your analysis the restaurant scene.
Yeah.
When he commits his first murder.
It's chilling.
It's chilling.
Yeah.
And it's chilling because he's so restrained. He's not chewing the scenery.
Right.
It's in his eyes. You see the internal struggle, the crossing of a line.
Yeah.
And it's just, wow. Powerful stuff.
There's a real Shakespearean tragedy, too. This fall from grace.
Totally.
This good man corrupted by the family business. It's he had no choice but to become the very thing that he swore he'd never be.
Right. And the film really makes you think about that. Was his fate inevitable?
Sure.
Or could he have chosen a different path? It's that kind of moral ambiguity that, I think really keeps us hooked.
And the supporting characters, too, really add to that whole family dynamic.
Oh, absolutely.
We've got Tom Hagen, the adopted son and lawyer, Sonny, the hothead,
Yeah.
Fredo, the insecure one.
Yeah.
It's each of them represents a different facet of the family's, power, but also vulnerability.
Yes. It creates this really richly textured world where even the, quote unquote, supporting characters have their own complexities and motivations.
Yeah.
They feel like real people.
Yeah.
They're not just, plot devices.
Right, yeah.
They're fully formed individuals. And that's what makes it so compelling to watch.
And it's not just the characters. I mean, the film itself is just so beautifully shot. In your critique, you use the phrase intimate and foreboding to describe the cinematography.
Yes. It's such an evocative way to put it.
It is. And to be honest, when I first read that, I was a little puzzled. Like, how can something be both intimate and foreboding at the same time? But then when I started thinking about the way the film looks, the way it's shot, it totally clicked.
Great. And that's the genius of Gordon Willis, the film cinematographer.
Yeah.
He was known the Prince of Darkness for a reason.
Yeah.
He loved using low-key lighting, deep shadows, darkness to create this mood, this atmosphere.
And it's so effective, too, because even in the scenes that take place in bright, sunny locations, like, there's still this underlying sense of unease, like something bad is about to happen.
Exactly. It's like the darkness is a character itself.
Yeah.
This constant presence looming over the Corleone family.
Yeah.
And, that visual style perfectly reflects the themes of the film. The corruption, the violence, the moral ambiguity. It's all there.
You brought up some really interesting examples in your analysis about how Willis uses light and shadow to create that sense of unease. Like, for example, the contrast between the darkness of Don Vito's office and the sunny Italian countryside where Michael's hiding out.
It's such a perfect example.
Right.
You have these two settings, and visually they represent the two worlds that Michael is caught between. The dark, violent world of the family business, and then this idyllic, peaceful world that he longs for.
Yeah.
But even in Italy, the darkness, it catches up to you.
It does. And that reminds me of another point you made in your critique about the use of symbolism.
Oh, yeah.
Like how food
Yeah.
and religious imagery play such a significant role throughout the film.
Oh, absolutely. Food, I mean, it's so powerful in The Godfather. It represents family, tradition.
Connection. But it can also be a weapon.
Right.
A tool for intimidation. Like, think about that scene where Clemenza teaches Michael how to make the pasta sauce.
Yeah.
He's literally showing him how to prepare for a hit using the language of food.
That's so true. And then the religious imagery. You can't talk about The Godfather and symbolism without talking about that iconic baptism scene.
Oh, yeah.
Intercut with the murders. I mean, that juxtaposition of the sacred rituals and the brutal violence, it's just so powerful.
It's a masterclass in filmmaking. That scene, I think it's really a visual representation of Michael's descent into darkness. His willingness to sacrifice his soul for the family. The baptism, which is supposed to symbolize rebirth and purification, becomes twisted, as he's ordering the deaths of his enemies. It's powerful.
And the film score, too, really enhances those symbolic moments.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Nino Roto's music, so iconic. You hear it, you know exactly what it's from.
Right. Instantly recognizable, and it just adds this whole other emotional layer to, like, every scene.
It does. And you're right. The music isn't just background noise.
Right.
It's integral to the storytelling. And Rota's score just perfectly captures this, like, blend of grandeur and melancholy that the film has.
Yeah.
There's a sense of operatic tragedy almost, which, goes back to those Shakespearean themes we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
It's like the music gives voice to those unspoken emotions of the characters.
Yes.
Like, it heightens the tension, the sadness, the moments of triumph and despair.
Exactly. And don't forget, too, the cultural aspect. The use of traditional Italian instruments, the melodies.
Yeah.
It really reinforces the family's heritage.
Yeah.
Their connection to their Sicilian roots adds another layer of authenticity, I think. Richness to that world.
One of the things that often gets brought up about The Godfather, though, is its length.
Yeah, that's a long one.
It's almost 3 hours long. I have to admit, sometimes I get a little impatient with long movies.
Sure, but with The Godfather, that length is essential.
Yeah.
It's not about rushing through the plot points.
Right.
It's about immersing you in that world, letting the story unfold at its own pace. It's like, you picked up on that in your analysis, too. It took time for you to really dig into the film, unpack all those layers.
It did. And it makes me wonder, if The Godfather were made today, would it still have that same kind of impact? Would audiences have the patience for such a slow-burning, character-driven epic?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's definitely a place for films like The Godfather in today's world.
Yeah.
But, it's true. Audience expectations have shifted.
Yeah.
We live in a culture of instant gratification.
Right.
We want everything right now.
Yeah.
We get our entertainment in these quick bite-sized chunks.
Right.
So it's hard to say.
And yet, there is something so captivating about a film that takes its time, that allows us to really, connect with the characters and their world.
Right. It's like the difference between reading a tweet and reading a novel.
Yeah.
They both have their place,
Mm-hmm.
but a novel just offers this depth and richness of experience that you just can't get from a tweet.
And I think that's why The Godfather continues to resonate with audiences decades after its release.
Yeah.
It's a film that demands your attention, your patience,
Yeah.
your emotional investment. And in return, it gives you this truly unforgettable experience.
I agree.
Yeah, it really does make you think, what makes a film truly timeless.
And, reading through your analysis, one of the things that really struck me was how you connected The Godfather to those broader themes that we're still dealing with today. Family, ambition, the American dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though the film was made over 50 years ago, it still feels so relevant.
Right. And I mean, who hasn't felt that pull between family loyalty and personal ambition, or questioned what it really means to achieve success in this country?
Right.
The Godfather just explores those themes in such a powerful, unflinching way.
And it does so without giving you easy answers,
Right, right.
It doesn't tell you what's right or wrong.
Right.
It just presents you with these complex situations, and you have to make up your own mind.
It's almost like you're having a conversation with the film itself.
Exactly.
And, that's what we're trying to do here on the deep dive, right? Spark those conversations, encourage people to, look a little deeper, go beyond just the surface level, really delve into what makes art so meaningful.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, I've always loved The Godfather, but this deep dive has been particularly eye-opening. Your analysis, you've helped me to see it in a whole new light.
That's what's so great about film analysis.
Yeah.
It can really change the way you watch a movie. It's like you're putting on a new pair of glasses. Suddenly you see the world differently.
It really is. Well, on that note, I want to thank you for sharing your insights with us today. This has been a truly enlightening conversation.
It was my pleasure. And to you, our listener, thank you so much for sending in such a thoughtful, insightful analysis. It's been wonderful exploring The Godfather with you.
And remember, this is just the beginning. There's a whole world of art and culture out there waiting to be explored.
Oh, yeah.
So keep watching, keep reading, keep thinking, and keep those deep dives coming. We'll see you next time.